Sukanya Ghosh from Central University of Kashmir. She did PhD from JNC and spent a couple of years at ICTP. Sukanya.
So first of all, I would like to thanks IASc for giving me this opportunity. And the title of my talk is Interplay of Unusual Structural Reconstruction and Exchange Mechanism followed by Electron Correlation in High Temperature 2D van-der-Waals magnets. And since past 1.5 years, I am working as an assistant professor at Central University of Kashmir. So first of all, this magnetism, it has long history, because this name magnets are believed to be originated from ancient Greek city named as Magnesia, where one day one Greek shepherd accidentally discovered that his iron stick is getting attracted by a stone, which was popularly later known as lodestone or magnetite. And since his discovery, magnets are widely used for various applications in human civilization till date. And actually this magnetism is originated from the electron spin or the alignment of electron spins in materials, which give birth to a new area of science known as spintronics. And spintronics is believed to be more advantageous than conventional electronics due to these following reasons. Now here I am mainly interested in van-der-Waals materials, where different atomic layers are held together by weak van-der-Waals interaction. And the main advantage of such materials is that these atomic layers can be arranged in different ways. And in this family of van-der-Waals materials, there is a newly discovered members exhibiting magnetic properties, which are popularly known as van-der-Waals magnets. And I am mainly interested in the two-dimensional or quasi-two-dimensional form of these van-der-Waals magnets, which are really useful for modern technologies, especially spintronics. And this field of 2D van-der-Waals magnets has started from 2017-18 with the discovery of the 2D van-der-Waals ferromagnets Cr2, Ge2, Te6 and Cri3, which are semiconducting magnet with low Curie temperature. And since then, this field is rapidly growing with the discovery of other van-der-Waals magnets. Now let's come to the topic of my talk. I will be here mainly talking about FGT systems or FeNGT2, where so this material FGT, they contains iron, germanium and telluride. And here N varies from 3 to 5. And these FGT systems are metallic in nature and they exhibit high Curie temperature or high magnetic transition temperature. Now here you see the atomistic structure of monolayer FGT systems, where from left to right you see that the number of iron atoms in the unit cell gradually increases. And this Fe3GeT2 and Fe4GeT2, that is these first two members, they do exhibit center of inversion symmetry, whereas Fe5GeT2 it does not have. And the main peculiarity of these FGT systems is that this system exhibits different iron sublattices. That is, these iron sublattices or iron atoms present in the unit cell, they are non-equivalent. And among these three members, Fe5GeT2 is the most peculiar one. And my research on FGT systems started with investigating the structural and magnetic peculiarities of Fe5GeT2. So here first what I am showing is the side view of Fe5GeT2 monolayer, which is the actually very simple side view which is expected based on the configuration of other FGT systems. Here the unit cell contains 5 iron atoms, which I have numbered as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the blue atoms are germanium, yellow atoms are the tellurium. So this is the expected view, but in reality this such atomistic structure in reality does not exhibit such simple atomistic structure, because see here this is the experimental STM view, STM picture, which is showing the side view of this system. Now if you look here, so these blue atoms, they are the germanium, and actually experimental STM image shows that germanium exhibits double occupancy sites. So this was the first experimental report on Fe5GeT2, and followed by this paper there are also other experimental reports that got published reporting the same observation, but the reason behind these double occupancy sites were not explained. Therefore this observation needs confirmation and clarifications from theory. So the question we are going to answer that why such unusual structural reconstruction happens in this system, and is there any consequence with the magnetic properties of this behind this such structural peculiarity. And note that Fe5GT2 is the only member of FGT where one of the iron atoms is directly aligned with the germanium. Say this is the Fe1 which is directly aligned with the germanium atom, and therefore this could be the source of the peculiarity of Fe5GT2. And in these FGT systems, the iron atoms are covalently bonded with its neighbors. Now there is electronegativity difference between iron and germanium, which causes partial transfer of electron between iron and germanium, and our results find that there is significant overlap between FeDg square orbital and germanium Pg orbital. And we know that the magnetization is nothing but it is the difference between the number of electrons between up and down spin channels, and due to such electron redistribution between this particular Fe1 which is directly aligned with the germanium, the magnetic moment of this particular Fe1 gets hugely quenched when we do not consider the double occupancy site of germanium, and this quenching of magnetic moment of Fe1 lowers the stability of this Fe5GT2 system without the double occupancy site of germanium. That is why it does not exist in nature. Now let's understand that how this double occupancy site of germanium can actually occur. So here there is one possibility, that is either Fe1 can be aligned directly above germanium, and when it happens then the germanium atom gets shifted down. Possibility number 2, where Fe1 can be situated directly below germanium, and when this happens then the germanium atom gets shifted up, and in both the cases the Fe1 germanium bond length remains the same. Now in the real scenario, that is from the experimental observations, it has been found that the Fe5GT2 unit cell contains both Fe1U and Fe1D, that is Fe1 is situated both above germanium and below germanium in a unit cell. And this double occupancy of Fe1 actually gives rise to or causes the double occupancy site of germanium. And to accommodate these double occupancy sites of Fe1 and germanium, the 1x1 unit cell is not enough. Therefore, one has to go beyond the 1x1 unit cell, and our calculation showed that √3x√3 is the smallest possible unit cell which can accommodate this Fe1GE double occupancy site. And this is the 3D view of this Fe5GT2 unit cell. And here this is the 2D projection of this √3x√3 Fe5GT2 unit cell. In this √3x√3, note that each atomic species is repeated thrice compared to the 1x1 cell. And here this is UDU configuration, where out of the 3 Fe1, 2 Fe1 atoms are situated above germanium and 1 below germanium. And accordingly germanium also gets shifted up and down respectively. And we compared the energetics of this UDU configuration with the UUU configuration, where all the Fe1 are situated above germanium, and our calculation showed that Fe1GE double occupancy site, that is this UDU configuration, is energetically more favored than UUU. And this is our simulated STM image of this UDU configuration. And this is the experimental image, and which shows the, or which confirms the √3x√3 topography of Fe5GT2 system. Okay. Now this was regarding the structural peculiarity. Now also this Fe1 site contains or it exhibits magnetic peculiarity. Here we have plotted the intersite exchange interaction of Fe1 with its neighbors, and here you see that this Fe1 species, it exhibits exchange frustration, that is it interacts both antiferromagnetically and also ferromagnetically with its neighbors, whereas the interaction of Fe5 species with its neighbors are mostly ferromagnetic. And here you see that here I have reported the atom projected magnetic moment of Fe atoms present in the unit cell, and you see that they exhibit a distribution of magnetic moment. Now, so far whatever results I showed, they are obtained using standard DFT, and we know that the basic principle of DFT is to map the many electron interacting system to n non-interacting system through this cone sham or this effective potential, where this many electron interaction term is included in the exchange correlation functional, and depending on the choice or accuracy of this exchange correlation functional, this mapping will be more exact. and the thing is the actual form of the exchange correlation function is not known. So different approximations have been made. For example, LDA, GGA, hybrid meta GGA, and the calculations performed using LDA and GGA, they fall in the category of standard DFT. And this is the way how the ground state electron density is obtained by following this self-consistency loop. Now, if we summarize our result of this first part, then we see that mostly our results obtained from standard DFT, or where we have used actually GG as the exchange correlation, they nicely agree with experiment in most of the cases. But except note that the transition temperature we obtain for Fe5GT2 comes as 475 Kelvin, whereas the experimental value is in this range, 275 to 310. And also the spectral properties obtained from standard DFT does not match with the experiment. And this is not only for Fe5GT2, for other systems as well. Therefore, we are missing something. So then we studied in more detail that what we are missing. Actually, these FGT systems are the admixture of the localized and itinerant electrons, because I have already mentioned that FGT systems contain different iron sublattices, and the electron correlation or localization of FeD states are different in these different sublattices. For example, in Fe3GT2 there are two types of iron sublattices. Say here one is Fe1 and another one is Fe2. You see that moment of Fe1 is larger than Fe2, and the localization of D state of Fe1 and Fe2, they do vary. For example, the D electrons are more localized for Fe1 than Fe2. So this site dependent electron correlation should be captured properly to reproduce the experimental results. And also there are other papers or other research articles, they do report the Kondo lattice behavior in FGT system, that is the interaction between the localized and itinerant electrons. Now initially it was not known to the community that how to accurately capture the electronic description in FGT systems by performing first principles calculations. We know that this standard DFT, that is LDA or GGA, they don't capture the electron-electron interaction correctly because they do suffer from electron interaction error due to the delocalization of electron. So therefore, we have to incorporate or include Hubbard-U parameter to take into account this electron correlation, and we have calculated the site-dependent Hubbard-U parameter for these FGT systems using constant linear response method. And also we have found that this effective value of U, the ratio of the effective value of U with the density of state of iron, this ratio comes around 0.5, which kind of can predict that these systems exhibit moderate electron correlation. Now to establish that what is the accurate computational technique to correctly capture the electronic and magnetic property of FGT systems, we perform calculations following standard DFT, static electron correlation, that is DFT plus Hubbard-U, and dynamic electron correlation, that is DFT plus DMFT, and compare our results to see that which of these can produce the correct electronic and magnetic description which can reproduce well the experimental results. Now actually DFT plus U is mainly applicable for strongly localized system, whereas DMFT or dynamical mean field theory is applicable for weakly or moderately localized system. And the main beauty of dynamical mean field theory is that here it incorporates effective Anderson impurity model, where the lattice is converted into an atom which is embedded in the electron bath, whereas the an electron in that atomic site can be annihilated or created by the interaction with the electron bath. Then actually we have performed DFT plus DMFT, that is the self-consistency, that is a full charge self-consistency DFT plus DMFT to capture that how the electron density gets modified due to the electron correlation. And here there are these two important parameters, which is the self energy and the Green's function, which mainly captures the many body effect. And this self energy, it actually describes the interaction of electron with the environment, and here the environment is the lattice, solid. And then when we obtain our results, we found that the magnetic moment calculated with DFT and DFT plus DMFT, they agree well with the experimental results, but whereas the exchange interactions, DFT and DFT plus U, they hugely overestimate than DFT plus DMFT, and this is the spin Hamiltonian which we have used to calculate the Curie temperature. Here the first term is the isotropic symmetric exchange, second term is the antisymmetric exchange, and the last term is the singular and anisotropy. And actually this first term, it plays dominating contribution or the major role to determine the Curie temperature. And this JIJ interaction can be computed by taking into the on-site term delta and the inter-site Green's function Gij. Then when after we calculated this Gij interaction by following these different three methodologies, and here I have plotted the first nearest neighbor Jij interaction, and here you see this interaction calculated using DFT plus DMFT is almost half of DFT, and the Curie temperature incorporating these Gij values are also calculated, and the Curie temperature obtained using the Gij, which was obtained from GGA plus DMFT, they agree well with the experimental result. What the red dashed lines show the experimental results. And why this happens? Actually, when we see that the incorporation of dynamical Mill field theory, it significantly changes the electronic property, because if you compare this band structure obtained from standard DFT and DFT plus DMFT, then you will see that the first of all the bands are kind of smeared and fuzzy in the case of DFT plus DMFT, and also the bandwidth has reduced, and these electronic states have shifted close to the Fermi energy, which lies at the zero energy. And this happens because we already have seen that this Gij is proportional to the inter-site Green's function, which is actually inversely proportional to the self energy, which takes into account the electron-electron interaction. And this real part of the self energy contributes to the shifting of bands towards the Fermi level and reducing the bandwidth. And imaginary part of self energy, it gives rise to the non-zero lifetime to the quasi-particle, which causes the smearing of the bands. And also we found the spectral properties obtained from DFT plus DMFT agrees well with the experimental results. And this is the effective mass, which is the quantitative measurement of electron correlation in the system. It really shows that there are two types of effective mass obtained for two different sublattices of Fe3GeT2. And therefore, our result confirms that DFT plus DMFT is the most accurate technique or more accurate technique among DFT and DFT plus U to correctly capture the electronic and magnetic properties of these FGT systems. And later actually, we wanted to see whether there is any way to further increase the Curie temperature of these FGT systems even beyond room temperature, because this is actually useful for spintronic applications. And we found that nickel doping, that is substitutional doping with nickel, can indeed increase the temperature around 400 Kelvin. And this result is actually in good agreement with the recent PRL paper, where theory and experiment, they do match quite nicely. And actually this behavior is quite unconventional, because both theory and experiment finds that first the Curie temperature increases and then it decreases. Because this happens because actually the Fe1 species, that is the odd one, which is directly aligned with the germanium, that is more prone to accommodate the nickel dopant. And up to the 20% doping concentration, all the Fe1 species get substituted with nickel. And you recall that Fe1 species, that also exhibits antiferromagnetic interactions, and these antiferromagnetic interactions actually goes down as more and more Fe1 gets substituted with nickel. But nickel impurity actually acts as the non-magnetic impurity. So after this certain doping concentration, as more and more other Fe sublattices gets replaced with nickel, the magnetization decays. Anyway, so to conclude, I can say that our result showed that confirms why the unusual, or it explains the reasoning behind the unusual structural reconstruction of Fe5GeT2, and it explains why the double occupancy of FeGe sublattice exists. And also we have established that DFT plus DMFT is the most accurate technique to correctly capture the electronic and magnetic property of Fe5GeT2, and also we have showed that it is possible to increase the Curie temperature beyond room temperature by nitrogen doping. And also at the present we are investigating the proximity effects of Fe5GeT2 by constructing heterostructures. And this work is actually done when I was a postdoc at Uppsala University, and I thank my collaborators, and thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, Ashwani.
Although your calculated results are qualitatively matches with the experimental ones, but I see the significant difference in the
Which one? The TC?
yeah.
Yeah, actually, this I did not mention. I missed to mention that this result, the experimental one, was done for bulk nickel, whereas our system we did monolayered bulk Fe5GT2 with nickel substitution, and our results are on monolayered Fe5GT2. So there is actually significant difference between bulk and monolayer, because in the case of bulk, the nickel atoms even can go to the van-der-Waals gap, because this is a van-der-Waals layered material, whereas in our case we did not have that degree of freedom. So it's true that it is qualitative agreement, but there are a few things which we could not capture because the dimension of our system, it was the 2D and the experiment was done in 3D.
This monolayer, is it this, your sample is actually monolayer, or you are just looking at the monolayer?
Yeah, this Fe5GT2, I would say it is quasi 2D, it is monolayer. Of course, it is monolayer with certain thickness. That is, it is not like graphene, it is not a perfect 2D, but it is a quasi 2D, it is monolayer.
Okay, the problem I had was, the experimental evidence for double occupancy was from scanning tunneling microscope.
Scanning electron STEM.
STEM, scanning tunneling electron microscope.
Yes.
So, which is basically surface sensitive.
True, but
the inside also the same thing holds, that's the question.
Yes, inside, even between the layers, even in each layer, that is each formula unit also the same thing holds. That is what our results also shows, because in the STM image, they showed that for each layer, there is it exhibits the double occupancy sites of germanium. That is within each formula unit. And since these systems are van-der-Waals bonded, so the monolayer can represent well the bulk up to a certain extent. I mean,
the only problem is surface properties can be very different from what's happening inside, well within the sample.
Yes, yes, true.
Yes, Professor Bhaskar.
So you mentioned about conduction electrons, so conducting system, and also localized spins.
Yeah.
So one of the early approaches to do arcade-wave interaction. You talked about direct exchange, then double exchange or arcade-wave.
Yeah, so our
sophisticated calculations.
Right, even our results, if I zoom into those exchange interactions, to, of course, what happened? Sorry, just a minute, let me move to that plot where I showed. Yeah, so we have seen that, of course, here the first nearest neighbor interaction is the significant one, or most dominant, it is most dominating one, and it decays with as the distance between the neighbors increases. But if I zoom into this position, this portion, then we see the oscillation as you see in the RKKY, because it's a metallic system.
I have another short question. It's a famous system, Fe3.
This particular is Fe5, yeah, the most peculiar one.
G is a famous Kondo insulator system.
Yes, Kondo lattice behavior.
Is there any connection between the physics of that Kondo insulator and whatever you are studying?
Yeah, because this already some research articles, because when we could not reproduce our results when we first obtained using standard DFT. That is because we are not capturing the electron correlation effect properly. So then we looked into the literature, and literature reports this Kondo lattice behavior, that is the interaction between the localized and itinerant moments do exist in these systems.
Fe3GE without
all the FGT systems, actually, it's true.
G alone is a beautiful Kondo.
Yes, you are very right, because most of this work is on Fe3, because Fe3GT2 is mostly studied actually among this, and this work are on Fe3GT2. You are very right. Yes, this Kondo lattice behavior, by that time it was observed, and all these were experimental reports. But initially there was no proper justification that which computational approach or first principle methodology is the correct one to capture properly the electronic behavior of these systems to reproduce the experimental results. But
Thanks,
yeah,
Sukanya.
thank you.